Okay, I think we're gonna start. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Gender Responsive Project Design and Indicators. Please, for those who join us right now, kindly mute yourself. There you go. So, I'm Fatma Seki from ITC ILO, and I have the pleasure to be with our expert for today's topic, Mrs. Adrienne Cruz. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. So this webinar is recorded, and we will upload the recording soon after we finish. Are you listening in using your computer's speaker system by default? If you prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed. The webinar will include a presentation during which you will have the opportunity to ask questions. By raising your hand, and for the function raise your hand, it's just right in front of your name, so please click on it to raise your hand and click on it again to unraise your hand. You will be given the floor, and you'll be speaking or sending questions through the chat function. You may send in the question at any time during the presentation or raise your hand during the presentation. We will collect all sent questions and address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So without any further waiting, I would like to introduce Mrs. Adrienne Cruz, our expert for the session, and who is going to tell us about how to design a gender-responsive project. Adrienne, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, thank you very much. And thank you, Fatma, for organizing this and helping us with the technology, and thank you, Anika, and others who are joining us and who have supported this. I'm really happy to be with you today, and I wish we could all be together physically, but we'll do our best. I would just like to make sure, can everybody raise their hand? Can I see everybody just raise their hand so that everyone knows how to do that? Because I would like for you to be able to, raise your hand and ask any questions as we go through this, so it's not just me talking. So Elisa has raised her hand, but could you explain again, Fatima, how we raise our hand? Because I don't think, I don't see the little hand on my screen, for example.
Yeah, you don't see the hand because you now took the the presenter role, but normally in front of your name there is a little icon next to your also microphone and your video, if you have a video, and you can basically, if you run your mouse on the right side on your name, you'll find a little hand.
Okay. So
yeah.
Anybody else, has anybody else been able to find a little hand and raise your hand? Because so far only Elijah has been able to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having. Okay. I'm having people who have problems. Let's keep starting, Adrienne, and maybe I will write people who just sent me that they cannot raise their hand, so we can do this via chat, okay?
Okay, great. That's a great idea.
Perfect.
So we'll try to find a way for people to participate with questions or observations, and if it's not possible by raising their hand, then maybe you can just send in your questions as we speak. So, well, let's get right into it. The reason that we're speaking today is to talk about how to design what we call a gender-responsive project, because research shows over the last 30, 40 years that when a project or an initiative does not specifically take into account the often different needs and concerns of both women and men, in the best case, the project will just reinforce unequal relations between women and men, and often a gender-absent project or initiative will even exacerbate women's unequal status and may even further marginalize them. So this is why we're so keen to make sure that we're being gender responsive in our projects. So together today, we're just going to go over a couple of key concepts that will help us to understand how to do this. We're going to just touch on the why, who, and what of gender responsive projects. And then we're going to zoom in on situation analysis in the project cycle. That's the most important part to get right, because if we have a gender, if we don't take into account gender in our project, in our situation analysis, then the rest of the steps are probably going to also be gender absent. We're also going to zoom in a bit on indicators, because what gets measured gets done, so we can build in a gender inclusive indicator, and that's going to help drive our project to be gender responsive. And finally, I'll share some good practices and tips. So let's just see if we're all together on the same page about some common gender-related terms. And again, I don't know if people know how to raise their hands, but let me put up one of the terms, one of the key concepts. I've put these two together. And the first two concepts I wanted to share with you are paid productive work, and the second is unpaid reproductive work. Now, would anyone like to just give us a quick little sentence and define what they think paid productive work might be as opposed to unpaid reproductive work? I can see I cannot see the hands raised anymore, Fatima, and I see some other guests joining us.
Yes, we just have more people joining and some having troubles to connect. We'll help them shortly, but I'm sending instructions on how to raise a hand. But please, people who want to take the floor, please feel free to unmute yourself and talk to us directly.
And Fatima, could you clean away some of the things that I'm seeing so that I could see the hands raised, if possible, but when you're ready.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. So could anybody just shout out paid productive work, unpaid reproductive work? Would you like to tell us what you think these two might mean?
Just for everyone who are connected, could you please turn off your webcams just so that the sound goes smoothly? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Eliza, are you still with us? You have your hand raised from when we were testing. Would you like to just take a shot and tell us what you think paid productive work and unpaid reproductive work might be? Eliza, can you hear me?
Elisa, do you hear us?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, she doesn't hear us, I think. But
oh, sorry, I can hear you now, but I just sent my answer as a chat message.
Okay, great. Why don't you just read your answer, because I see it there. Thank you.
I said paid productive work may be a regular paying job in the economy, while unpaid work may be care work performed in the home.
And Anita, thank you. You also gave an example. You said work in household domestic chores. So yes, you are both exactly right. Thank you very much. Paid, let's just define work, labor. Work is any service or product produced. So, and that work may be paid, it may be unpaid. The paid productive work definition that Eliza gave us is exactly right. This is work that is compensated either through in-kind, so you might be compensated by being paid with food or some sort of material, or paid in the form of money. And then she said unpaid reproductive work is usually care work, and that's exactly right. And this is work that is usually performed within the private sphere, the home, or the community. And this has to do with care work for elderly or for children, and also for the household. So thank you very much. That was perfect. Why are we concerned? Why did I put these two terms first? Because women often, almost all over the world, women carry or perform the overwhelming burden of unpaid reproductive work in the private sphere, and this compromises their ability to both participate in training and vocational upgrading of skills, and it also compromises their ability to participate in paid productive work. So this is why I'm putting this one up first. Okay, let's do another one. You did great. Thank you. The next two set of terms are productive resources and benefits. And I'd really love it if somebody else would like to either raise their hand and tell us verbally, or if you feel more comfortable sending through the chat mechanism. But could somebody take a chance and define what we mean by productive resources?
Just to all, I just sent the indication. Okay, so I just sent the instructions to how to raise your hands, but I see already an answer to Adrienne. Adrienne, if you see it in the chat. So
yes, let's see. No, I don't see the answer.
Okay, basically the answer is productive resources are raw materials.
Okay, great. Yes, productive resources are the materials or inputs that we need in order to engage in productive work, paid productive work. So productive, and by the way, let me tell everybody, you don't need to take notes, you don't need to worry about remembering what we're saying now, because in the this presentation, I have given you all the definitions in the notes section of this PowerPoint that I'm showing. So please just listen now, and you can go back and you can look at these at the definitions. So yes, productive resources are anything needed to produce a good or service, and the examples are capital, credit, technology, transport, free time, land, etc. So thank you very much. And does anyone, benefits, let me just go ahead and say that one because that's pretty obvious. Benefits are the compensation or anything that accrues as a result of that paid productive work. So this could be, like we said earlier, the benefits could be in kind or monetary payment, food or income. And benefits also include things that we can't touch, but they're very real, things like status in the community and in the family, power and recognition. Okay, let's go to the, thank you for that. Let's go to the next set of terms. And this is, I was earlier talking about these, I even gave you some hints. Gender absent project as opposed to a gender responsive project. Who would like to either tell us or send a little chat definition? Gender absent project, gender responsive project. And while some of you were typing up a possible definition, I'm going to just tell you that we used to call the first term, we used to say gender blind project. But our disability specialists have asked us to avoid that term because it somehow gives a negative impression about those who cannot see. So now we use the term gender absent project. Okay, Anita, thank you very much again. Gender absent is often gender neutral, and it takes no consideration for the different needs of girls and boys, women and men. Exactly right. Thank you, Anita. That's perfect. A gender absent project just assumes that everyone is going to be able to participate equally and will have the free time, all ability to actually show up and participate in this project. The project in its analysis takes no account of the different responsibilities that girls and boys, women and men within that society are expected to take on, or the socialized duties, socialized expectations about how women and men are to act, what kind of work they are to participate in or cannot participate in. So yes, that's just a perfect definition, and you've even added some extra, thank you, Anita, you've even added some extra details. You and you said men's needs as well, by the way, because there's also a whole another area that we often fail to address when we talk about gender, and that is the male side of gender and gender, we call it men and masculinities. What are the expectations, the duties, the behaviors that you socialize from a very early age vis-a-vis boys and men, and how does a young man prove his masculinity to others? And so thank you very much for making that point. So Anita adds that data is disaggregated by gender and sex and takes into account gender roles. I think there Anita is defining for us gender responsive. So yes, the very first step in any gender responsive initiative is that we look at the data and we try to determine trends vis-a-vis. So we disaggregate the data by sex. That means we look at data about the paid productive work, percentage of women that are involved in paid productive work in the community. What about the percentage of men that are involved in unpaid reproductive work? What percentage of the household work is being performed by men and boys? So we use this data to then form our analysis. And that analysis is going to talk about gender roles. So thanks, Anita. That was, I love the simplistic yet very clear and correct definitions that you've given us. Okay, I have a last two concepts that I'm going to throw out for you, and I'm challenging some of the other participants to also contribute some definitions. The first is gender mainstreaming, and the second definition is gender equality. It might seem obvious, but it's surprising around the world when we conduct these webinars and when we conduct these workshops. It's interesting to hear what sometimes people think gender equality is. And so let's be really clear about what we mean when we talk about, from an ILO perspective, gender equality in the world of work. So I hope some participants can give us some definitions. Okay, Hassan Jabber, thank you. Gender equality, the state of equal access to resources and opportunities regardless of one's sex or gender. Perfect. Thank you, Hassan. Gender equality in the world of work is very simply, just like Hassan said, access to, so equal access to and equal opportunities, treatment in the world of work. It's really simple. So equal access to labor markets means that maternity tests are not used on young women who are applying for a job. Equal access means people are being hired for jobs based on their competencies and not based on the fact that they were born either a girl or a boy. And equal opportunity means that once I'm hired, I actually have equal treatment. Let me say that. Once I'm hired and I'm working in the labor market, I actually have the same, I'm treated equally. So I receive the same pay for the same type of work or work of equal value as my male colleagues. Simple yet very important example there. And Elisa, you've added, so thank you, Hassan. That was perfect. Elisa, oops. Oh gosh, Deborah, sorry, you added for gender mainstreaming the idea of assessing implications for men and women of any planned action. Yes, that is exactly right. Gender mainstreaming is a really, it's just at every step of every initiative, and that includes policy making right down to a small meeting. I'm going to think about, assess the implications for both women and men. So I'm going to think about, if I hold a meeting for my project during the middle of the day, when I know that in this society women are expected to be preparing the noon meal for the children before they go back to school, am I really going to be able to expect that women can come? So, yes, thank you. Gender mainstream, I'm going to read it again. It's just such a nice, simple, and clear definition. Assess any implications for both women and men of any planned action. Thanks, Deborah. And Deborah added gender mainstreaming, Elisa also added to the gender mainstreaming definition, considering gender throughout the design, implementation, and evaluation of a project or a program. And Sarah added, including gender-sensitive language, women and men equally involved in decision-making, and gender mainstreaming, assessing different applications of any planned policy action, including legislation and programs. Yes, in all areas, all levels, and women and men are equally involved in decision-making up to and far, including gender-sensitive language. Yes, so I obviously this group is has a I would say a very high level of understanding of these terms, and I thank you very much. Those are all exactly important points to make, and I especially appreciate the one about decision making, because that's one of the most, it's one of the easiest ways that you can mainstream gender into your project. We know studies show that once we have 30% critical mass of women, or the underrepresented sex, usually women, in a decision-making body, the conversations, the dialogue, the types of problems that are identified as problems, and the solutions, we can actually see changes. So 30% critical mass women in your decision-making bodies for projects, with the aim, of course, of gender parity, is an excellent way to mainstream gender into the project. So thanks for that. I'm just going to, we're going to leave this slide, but I'm going to share with you one last picture to show the difference between equity and equality, because often people use these and sometimes it can be a bit confusing. So on the left, I've given you a picture of of equality. So you can see that we have three different observers of this American baseball game, and one of, in order to treat them all equally so that they can all see over this kind of a tall fence, I've just given them each box, and I've said, okay, everybody's been treated equally, and now, you know, they all have access to the baseball game. But you can see that some, it hasn't really changed the experience for some, because one is too short and one can just barely see over that fence. So if you look at the right side of my screen, I there have given two boxes to the observer who's the shortest. It looks like a little girl. And now she can actually see like the other. She can see what's going on. That was an equity measure. Sometimes you hear this referred to as positive discrimination, but I like the term equity measure. So it's any type of action that you take in order to put everybody on a level playing field. We often use equity measures in a project when we know that there's been past economic, social, political discrimination, there's an unequal playing field, and so I need to take a couple of targeted measures just to make sure that everybody's on the same equal footing and can participate equally. So that might mean for my project that I'm going to hold my meetings for participants. I'm going to hold them at times during the day and in locations where I know that both women and men can attend safely and without problems. So I'll leave you with that, and we can come back to that if you like. Let's go back now.
Sorry, I have a question, Adrienne. I have a question regarding that specifically.
Yes, please.
Can I ask you, when does it become actually discriminatory, in the sense that you're giving more attention to women's needs at the time you're planning your workshop, or at the venue you're selecting, or the services that you're providing for them to come along and be part of your activity? It is sometimes seen by men and criticized, and we get criticized of the fact that much more is done to help women participate, and this is felt to be discriminatory against men who have a different need and a different opinion and a different timing and a different request.
Okay, excellent, Rania. Thanks. We met many years ago, I think, weren't you with us for the workshop in Beirut for the action plan? I recognize your voice.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that question. And that's a very excellent question, because if you take targeted actions to try to make sure that everybody's on an equal playing field, and you do not explain why you're taking these, if you don't sensitize the men in the community about why we're using some targeted equity measures, then you will have backlash. And so what's very important is, while or before you're going to take these measures, you need to have some sensitization exercises with the men separately, and help them to understand why we need to do this, why the project's going to be doing this, and how this is going to help the success of the project. It's going to help how it's going to benefit families that are participating in the project, how it's going to benefit the community, etc. And it's very important also to bring on some male peer educators. So we're looking for men, often young men, but also we're looking for religious leaders, community leaders, men who are respected in the community by other men. And we're going to bring them on as peer educators and as gender equality champions. And they are actually going to help us to sensitize the other men. Now, and that's a perfect moment for me to show you this picture. That's our Director General. He is, you can Google it while we speak, he's a gender equality Geneva champion. He has stood up and given on the website Gender Geneva Champions, if you want to Google it, you can see his 2017 commitments. Our Director General is telling us here, this is taken from his own report on our ILO Action Plan for Gender Equality. He's telling the governing body that the ILO policy on gender equality is operationalized through action plans. And after so many years, do we really still need a gender action plan? And he says, I have no doubt that this is still quite necessary. Gender equality is not only an inherent value of the ILO, but perhaps more than ever, strong leadership by ILO is needed in this area. This is because major gender gaps in the world of work persist. Recent ILO data shows that millions of women are losing ground in the quest for equality in the world of work. We're not just, we haven't just consolidated our gains. In many areas around the world, we've actually lost some ground in the last couple of years. There is no time for complacency and no time to waste, and the ILO must lead by example. Now, who are we talking about? Why are we so concerned with a gender-responsive ILO in the world of work? Well, I'm only going to go back to 1995 when the Beijing Conference on Women was held, and since then the world has, had these at the conditional status of women every 10 years, every 15 years after the conference, Beijing plus 10, Beijing plus 15, Beijing plus 20, the MDGs, the now Sustainable Development Goals, all contain a critical element for gender equality and women's empowerment, and we've had a paradigm shift. We're now saying that we cannot achieve sustainable, equitable, inclusive development if gender equality and women's empowerment are not a critical base for this development. So we've had a paradigm shift. Our own 1919 ILO Constitution, in the preamble, mentions women, and it mentions that, and this is all in the PowerPoint, it mentions that equal pay for work of equal pay and equal pay for work of equal value in the preamble. And it also, and I'll quote, states that all human beings, irrespective of race, creed, or sex, have the right to pursue their material well-being and spiritual development in conditions of freedom, dignity, economic security, and equal opportunity. So gender equality, women's empowerment is in our DNA. We're part of ILO. We are officials with a rights-based UN organization, and that is in our DNA. Now, I've given you just some facts there having to do with the gender equality policy for ILO that I mentioned earlier, including that our DG in our action plan is accountable to our constituents. So in the governing body insists on our Director General giving a report. This has changed, Rania, since we had our workshop in Beirut. This is the action plan. Our governing body insists on our DG reporting on progress and gaps in operationalizing the policy through this action plan. That's every 2 years. Our governing body gets that report, and the DG is accountable to the governing body. The Deputy Director Generals are accountable for implementing and monitoring progress within their portfolios. Regional directors are accountable for gender-responsive outcomes and indicators vis-a-vis the relevant regions. Field office directors are accountable in program areas, including if there's a Decent Work Country program in the country, and for promoting constituents' capacities, and all staff are expected to mainstream gender into their daily work. Now, we are soon to celebrate our 100 years of ILO's existence, and we have I'm happy, but I'm also a little sad to have to say that we have 100 years of governing body resolutions, decisions, discussions on gender equality and women's empowerment. And I've just given you a couple of them from the last couple of years. You all should have heard about the cross-cutting policy driver on gender equality and non-discrimination. You know that I just told you about the action plan, progress and reports that go to our governing body, which approves the new action plans. In March 2017, the DG told, I was there in the room, the DG told the governing body that 25% of the P&B 2018-19 indicators are gender inclusive. Sorry, he told the governing body that all outcome indicators at the governing body's insistence include success criteria on gender equality and non-discrimination. That's in the record. And in November of 2012, gender parity was instructed to be the goal. The governing body instructed our Director General to begin sending a personal letter to any government that did not have at least 30% women on its ILC delegation, and to ask that government what it was doing to improve so that it would reach parity, which is 45 to 55% of women on its ILC delegation. I have copies of all the letters right here. I can let you know if your country received a letter or not. And finally, in March 2005, I'm not going to go back further than that, the GB gave an instruction that all technical cooperation should mainstream gender. Now, I actually thought that that 2005 instruction to ILO to mainstream gender into all technical cooperation is worth putting up on the screen here. Why? Because you can see it's very short, it's very succinct, but it actually spells out in a really clear, nice way exactly what needs to be done to mainstream gender into a project. It says that it asks the Director General to work with constituents, donors, and beneficiaries of our technical cooperation so that all our programs and projects systematically mainstream gender throughout the project cycle. Specifically, this means involving both women and men in constituents and beneficiaries consultations and analysis. We're not just holding consultations and meetings with the heads and the deputy heads of our constituents in a country where we're getting just all men. We also are going to involve women in these consultations and in the analysis. We're going to include data that's disaggregated by sex and gender in the analysis and justification for the project documents, formulate gender-sensitive strategies and objectives and indicators. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, including outputs and activities that are consistent with promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. And we're going to strive for gender balance in the recruitment of project personnel and experts, and in the institutional structures set up under the projects. Remember, I said one of the easiest ways to do this is to, the project document states, critical mass women 30% in the decision-making body with the aim of achieving parity. And finally, in terms of reference for evaluations, requiring the inclusion of impact assessment on gender equality and gender expertise. Well, I can assure you that that has been done because there are 5 indicators on mainstreaming gender into evaluations of projects and initiatives, programs. So I have to say our evaluation office has done a wonderful job of mainstreaming gender into the evaluation processes. So a project that has mainstream gender is going to do really well vis-a-vis an evaluation on the gender perspective, and a project that has not will not do well. And finally, our GB asked ILO to increase, through technical cooperation, the capacity of ILO constituents and implementing partners to promote gender equality in the world of work. So, let me quickly show you a statistic. Our action plan measures the extent to which development cooperation, or what we used to call technical cooperation, mainstreams gender. It's one of the indicators. And unfortunately, we have not made progress on this indicator. The indicator measures the extent to which our development cooperation is what we call gender responsive. And we have a marker with a methodology, and if you're interested, I can explain that. Actually, in the PowerPoint that you'll receive a copy of, I give you the definitions for the 4 different markers. So marker 1 and marker 2 are development cooperation projects that are gender absent. They just assumed that women and men will be able to participate in and that their problems will be addressed by equally and they'll benefit equally from the project. So they're gender absent. And marker 3 and 4 are what we call gender responsive projects. These are projects that have taken a gender perspective based on sex disaggregated data and the analysis, and then the strategies, implementation, the monitoring, decision making have all made sure to include women's perspectives, men and masculinities perspectives, and so those are ranked as markers 3 and 4, and those are considered gender responsive. I think you can look at the slide and you can see that in 2008-2009, only 28% of the ILO projects around the world were what we would call gender responsive. That means over three-fourths were gender absent. And remember, gender absent just means at best, you're just reinforcing unequal relations. You're not changing anything. And at worst, you're probably exacerbating women's unequal status and further marginalizing them. So you can see 2010, 2011, that rose a little bit to 31%. In 2012, 2013, it rose a little bit more to 36%. And then in 2014, 15, we lost ground. It was back down to 27%. Now, you can imagine the governing body, when they saw this, they jumped on it. And I just want to tell you I just want to read to you some of the reactions by our governing body. The results are sobering. The evaluation and the paper noted with alarm the fact that 73% of these projects and programs were missing or had weak gender components. And several regional groups, I was there, several regional groups restated and said, this is indeed alarming. Far too many cases where there's been little or no progress, this evaluation must be a catalyst for action and improvement. And and by the way, the governing body also made strong calls for more accountability. So that's why this action plan has those high-level accountability mechanisms now. So we know we need to do better. This webinar is part of this process because the Arab region did not perform well vis-a-vis. We also disaggregated by regions. Now, I want to show you another indicator, another results slide. And this is on decent work country programs, which is also one of the indicators in the action plan. And this is a very different story. The decent work country programs we track, it's actually an indicator that tracks the decent work country indicators, because I told you earlier what gets measured usually gets done. That's what we focus on. And the reason this one is so interesting is because you can see in 2008-2009, 0% of decent work country programs, I know because I am the person who actually scanned all the decent work country programs, 0% had at least one gender inclusive indicator. And a gender inclusive indicator is simply either one that is disaggregating progress or gaps by sex, or it's measuring progress in promoting gender equality or sensitizing men and taking a men and masculinities approach in the context of promoting gender equality and women's empowerment, or trying to dismantle sexist laws or legislation. These are the types of examples. In 2010-11, we changed the methodology. We became even more strict. We said 35% of the indicators in a decent work country program should be gender inclusive. And look at that. We actually achieved 17% of decent work country programs met that pretty ambitious indicator, I would say. In 2012-13, 29%, almost 30%, almost critical mass of decent work country programs were considered to be gender responsive. And I'm really, really pleased to say that in the last biennium, 2014 to 2015, 50% of decent work country programs were considered to be gender responsive vis-a-vis the indicators. So we can do this. There is no reason why we can not also show the same sort of quantifiable progress with development cooperation. Okay, What are we talking about in the time that we have left? That was the why, who, what, and to give you a little bit of sense of what we're talking about when we're zooming in on the on technical development cooperation. And this is the project cycle image that Esther Gomez helpfully shared. And I want to just bring your attention to the fact that we're only talking about design and the first step in the project cycle, which is the situation analysis, or sometimes called identification. So we're not talking about the other steps right now, just the first step. But the good news is, if you can get this step right, then the rest of the steps can build on a gender responsive analysis, and you're on the right way. So it's really the step to get from the beginning. Now, I have a really easy way to remember how to conduct an analysis, a situation analysis, that is what we call gender responsive. And I didn't make this up. This is actually based on important work done, in some of the top universities around the world, some of the top Southern-based thinkers and analysts on the ground. And this was, what I've prepared for you in the notes section of the PowerPoint is based on our International Training Center interns course on how to make sure situation analysis looks at both women and men's concerns. So I'm going to take you through the 4 steps, and then I'm going to give you an easy little trick that I use to remember how to do this. And it's a great way to remember how to do situation analysis. First of all, we need to look at the division of labor of the community that we're working with. So the division of labor, remember, labor is simply defined as a product produced or a service rendered. Now, and we divided that up by paid productive work, and we also talked about unpaid reproductive work. So I'm just going to look at, within this community, who is working in productive work, who is concentrated in carrying out unpaid reproductive work, what percentage of men are undertaking or taking on their responsibilities in the household, what percentage of men are engaged in elder care in the community or in their home, what percentage of women are engaged in paid productive work. It's as simple as that. The next thing I want to look at is access to and control over productive resources and benefits. So, some of you gave some excellent examples of what these are. So, access to productive resources, but not just access, control. Remember that having access to a productive resource such as land, credit, capital, machines, tractor, animals, doesn't mean I control those resources. So access and control over productive resources. I also want to look at the benefits. Who is controlling, who is receiving benefits for their work, and are they controlling those benefits? If women are, a high percentage of women are engaged in paid productive work in my community, but I notice that the benefits, when they take them home, actually are not controlled. The spending of these benefits is controlled by a mother-in-law or the husband or a brother or somebody else. Then I need to note this in my my notes. Third step, needs, both daily and practical. Daily needs, especially in very poor communities, are going to be linked with survival. So that the daily practical needs are going to be things like water provision, looking for firewood. How far do I have to go in order to bring it back? How much time do I have to devote to that? Taking care of children, elderly, those are some examples. Now, strategic needs are usually more long-term, and these are more about empowering and creating opportunities for me to engage in paid, productive work that is decent. So strategic may be things like, I need to be able to attend a training. I need to be able to organize with some of my other workers, wherever we happen to be, and in order to voice our needs and have a collective voice about what our needs are and the dangers in the workplace, for example. Now, the last and final step of my situation analysis is looking at opportunities and challenges for our ILO constituents. We're ILO. We need to look at what are the opportunities for our own constituents to promote gender equality and women's empowerment, and to promote labor markets where the people who are working in those are chosen based on competencies, not the fact that I'm born a woman, a girl or a boy. I'm contributing based on my competency. So, and then what are the challenges for our constituents? Often these will be cultural. Often these will be economic. These will be sometimes legal. So there are restraints to our constituents achieving their gender equality related objectives. So I also want to unpack those and understand those. Now,
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I have a case of Saudi Arabia. In the project formulation, when we went ahead and wrote the background of the project with the situational analysis, the focus was on vocational training. And as you know, in vocational training, unless it is specifically opened for women, it does not have a lot of women doing paint and mechanics and AC fixing and all of that. So we had to write a project proposal that was gender absent, and it was criticized by Pardev as being gender absent. But we used the first step of the project to actually promote and raise awareness among the women's section of the Vocational Training Corporation through what we were doing with men in order for them to themselves request that the same applicability of the training material that we were delivering on business management be applied to their educational classes as well. And we actually managed to now, without it being in the project document, expand to women's section and to incorporate it and to have it better implemented than men. And now it's actually working better with the women's section than it is with the men's section. However, we had to abide by the constituents' request, social and cultural needs of not putting it in the project document to avoid any kind of stopping the project because of their inability to see the importance of gender equality, and you know, make the project pass through the appraisal and sign on it without gender being included in it. So when you speak about the opportunities and the challenges, how can I, with the short time frame in the formulation of a project document, raise this awareness, promote this importance of the presence of women and this equal treatment for men and women in a project when my constituents are not open for that, and especially if they are in the Arab world in areas that are not women friendly and with governments that are not willing to be educated in a small time when you're writing a project proposal.
Thanks for that question. I'm going to give a short answer because it's a rather complicated context and question that you've asked. But I'm going to give the short answer. The short answer is we have worked, ILO has worked with, men and masculinities experts all over the world. And these men and masculinities experts have told us, and then some of them have worked in, I remember one, she worked in Yemen, and she told us, there is always, no matter if you're in the middle of the desert or if you're in an urban setting, there is always one man who is questioning the status quo. There is always one. And what we do is we want to find that man. And we want to work with that man to bring on his peers. And this can be a rather long process, but it works. So I want to acknowledge the difficult context in Saudi Arabia, but I also want to say that you will always find one man who is willing to challenge and who can bring on the peers, and that's the one that you want to work with. The other thing I want to say is I congratulate you on your insistence in bringing the women on, and I hope, and you can speak offline if you want, but I hope that you are able somehow to document and formalize the achievements. You said even the project that worked with the women even it sounded like it was successful. I hope that this is going to be documented and so that you have quantifiable evidence for the next round, however you're going to take this forward. So thank you for that. Did anybody else have a question right now before I move away from the situation analysis? Okay, I'm just going to share with you. You can jump in if you want. I'm just going to share with you an easy way that I remember how to do this, because it's not always easy to remember off the top of your head. It's sort of silly, but I use a yogurt. I have this image in my head of a yogurt container, because Danone is a very famous. I don't know if in your countries Danone yogurt is on the market, but I just remember the first 4 letters of Danone yogurt, and that helps me. Division of labor, access to and control over resources and benefits, needs, opportunities and challenges. So I hope that might be a handy way for you to remember it too. All right, let's leave now the very first step of the project cycle, and let's go all the way to sort of what I consider to be the end, which is where we develop indicators, because that's at the end of this project we want to somehow have captured or measured some progress on as a result of our project. So what I've done here is I've just recreated. I've taken guidance from the excellent Pardev information brochures, and you can, I'm not sure you can Google these, but if you look on the Pardev's internet site, you can find these. I have used these Pardev information brochures to inform this slide, and I've created some simple examples. On the first row going across, I've just put immediate objectives or the project outcomes. And the aim of such indicators is to help measure changes directly resulting from the project. And these can be changes that I can measure vis-a-vis the target group. These can be changes I can measure vis-a-vis the institutional capacity of the constituents, or policy, regulatory, larger context. And Pardev reminds us that it's also helpful to see if a project is on target. You can use these as you're implementing the project. They're also quite handy for communicating results and successes and gaps to others, including donors, and inspiring others who might like to replicate or adapt the project for another context. Now, I've given you an example of a gender absent indicator. Rate of decrease in accidents in the workplace. We see that all the time. We review, JED, I'm with the Gender Equality and Diversity ILO AIDS branch. We review project proposals as part of the Pardev mechanism, and we see this often. Rate of decrease in accidents in the workplace. That's not really going to show me information that will help me to know if it doesn't really reflect a gender responsive analysis based on sex disaggregated data, first of all, if I'm coming up with indicators like that. So I have reworked that indicator. I have used no more, maybe even less words, and you can see my gender inclusive indicator next to it in the green. Decrease in women and in men workers' accidents. Because we know that men, I might have mentioned earlier, men are actually more vulnerable to certain dangerous workplaces based on, we somehow think that men can take bigger risks and can work in dangerous working environments. And so I'm going to track women's accident rates and men's. And there should be some trends. Women are exposed to, in general, different types of accidents and dangers in the workplace as opposed to men. And part of reminds us that we can't just have this quantitative indicator. That's a very quantitative indicator I've just shared with you. We need to combine a quantitative indicator with a qualitative indicator. And this provides, especially in, we're promoting decent work among women and men. Well, that's a very abstract concept, and we struggle with that. So we need a qualitative indicator to go with this, because we're trying to measure changes. We're trying to also learn from our work, lessons learned, accountability, etc. So I have also given an example in the next row under my gender absent constituents. Establish a tripartite working group. So here's the gender absent. We see this often. This is a typical indicator. Constituents establish a tripartite steering group, let's say to address accident rates. Next to that, in the green row, I've given you using no more words than that one, a gender-inclusive quantitative plus qualitative indicator. Okay, so the first part of the puzzle is women's representation in tripartite steering group. So it's understood that a tripartite steering group has been formed, and I'm tracking women's representation in that tripartite steering group with a minimum critical mass of 30% women, and the goal is gender parity, 45 to 55%. Now, my qualitative indicator is percentage of gender-inclusive agenda items. So I want to track the extent to which this steering group is actually addressing gender-related accidents, men's vulnerability in the more dangerous occupations, etc. And so I'm going to track the extent to which the agendas of the steering group contain gender-related agenda items. That's a really simple way to do it, right? You just collect all the agenda item lists. Let's say the steering group meets 5 times during the year. I just collect those 5 agenda item lists and count. This is a really simplistic example that I'm giving you just to make my point. Now, let's quickly look at outputs. Indicators, these indicators I'm a little less interested in because really the output indicators are to help the project coordinators. They measure delivery of products and services, so it's more useful for the manager of the project. But I wanted to also give an example of a gender absent indicator, output indicator, and there it is. Percentage of labor inspectors who participate in and complete a training. And, okay, I see that often too. I've given you an example. At least I'm going to make this quantitative indicator gender inclusive. I'm going to track the percentage of both women and men labor inspectors who have completed the training. And because we know, for example, that workers are much more intimidated. Let's say if I want to tell a labor inspector, there's sexual harassment going on here, it's going to be much more difficult for a young woman to tell that to perhaps an older male labor inspector than it would to a younger female labor inspector. So And then I combined that, following Pardev's good advice, and I combined it with a qualitative indicator, percentage of trained women and men demonstrating increased knowledge of ILO inspection principles and methods. So I'm going to look at, you know, have the men, do I need to go back and beef up or improve part of the section, maybe on sexual harassment, because some of the women are, you know, I'm seeing some trends. Some of the male participants in my training programs didn't understand. So I'm giving you really simple examples, but I'm just trying to make the point. Now, some of you have sent some comments, and I'm sorry I can't read these at the same time that but let me just look through them really quickly. If you send a comment to everybody, I'll say your name and read it. Anita says, gender is a very sensitive subject, and without the proper knowledge, practitioners may find themselves reproducing stereotypes about women and men and girls and boys' roles and relations. Gender mainstreaming makes sure to integrate these differences throughout the project cycle. Anita also added, I think this is a very interesting question. Sometimes gender sensitivity is also adapting the content of the project documents so that they are applicable. Yes, we all understand this delicate trapeze line that we walk on vis-a-vis the local context. That doesn't mean sacrificing gender equality, but being adaptable to different contexts. And I liked Rainia's, I liked the way Rainia just didn't give up. You know, when they said, but wait a minute, you know, we can't have a project that's only going to help, you know, the men, Saudi Arabia, you know, 50% of the population are women. We also need, we're a rights-based organization. So I like the way Rania was so perseverant, and now I think she might have a good case in numbers. So yes, being adaptable, but I like your point about we always, you know, we are working for a rights-based organization because we believe in rights. So obviously, you shouldn't be working for ILO if you do not, in your own DNA, our ILO shared DNA, if you are not constantly looking for how to make sure that both women and men benefit equally from our initiatives. So excellent point. Okay, somebody else privately said, I'd suggest a more comprehensive analysis as far as the needs are concerned. This should be done in full alignment with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, starting with the physiological, safety, further to communication, belonging, esteem, and finally self-actualization. Yes, and, this is very true, and that's why I was careful to talk about addressing addressing community members' basic needs first. We cannot expect people to be able to participate in an ILO training project that's 10 kilometers away when people don't even have, you know, safe transport. People don't even have a way to, they can't even afford to get 10 kilometers down the road. So, of course, we want to address practical, everyday needs that are linked with gender. So what has society's socialized roles and responsibilities linked with everyday survival? We need to address those first. I need to make sure that women can actually safely get to that training locale. Maybe I need to bring the training locale to where they are if there's a danger of violence when they're on the road. And yes, and then the strategic needs are exactly that. We're higher up on the Maslow's pyramid of needs, and there we're talking about communication, belonging, and self-actualization. Another participant has privately said that, another participant has asked, where can we find the part of information brochures? So let me see if our Pardev colleagues who are listening in, I believe, how we could get those to participants. These are excellent. They're 16. And
hi, Adrienne. It is already there. The links are already there for everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. That was Esther. I recognize your voice. Thank you, Esther. There it is. Okay. Esther's put up the links. You can see them. Okay. We have now, I think I have around 10 minutes left. We've worked. Thank you for those suggestions, comments, all very pertinent, and I do appreciate them. So we just have one last, I promised at the end to share some good practices and tips. And these are based on real-life ILO experiences, and these are all taken from one of the other ILO part of information brochures on, I believe, on how to mainstream gender into projects. And so I've just taken a couple. You will have some others that you're welcome to contribute. Leverage local gender experts and advocates. Obviously, it's always in every country. There's excellent. I've been in the field, and I know there are excellent gender equality advocates. They're often academics. They're often associated with NGOs that are promoting women's rights. They're often men. More and more, we now have growing numbers of countries where we have groups of men who are promoting ending gender-based violence and women and promoting women's equality. I've worked with some excellent male gender equality specialists. So in every country, there are local gender equality advocates who would just love to help make your project a success. They would love to contribute to that. So leverage them. You can ask the field-based gender specialists. Just Google the JED ILO GED site, and you'll see our list of gender specialists in the field. Ask me. Second tip is to develop indicators inclusively and democratically. So we're not going to obviously sit with, a couple of heads of the constituents and come up in the Capitol and come up with some, what we think might be some great indicators for success. We're going to engage in a conversation, a facilitated dialogue with the people who are actually part of the community that we're working in. So it may be that women are not going to feel comfortable speaking in front of the men, members of the community. So I might separate, and I might have a conversation with women, and then I might have a conversation with the men. And then I'm going to try to bring them together, because it's very important to walk my ILO talk and to promote this idea of women and men working together in partnership in the world of work as equals. So I'm going to hold some kind of a facilitated event where I bring them together if I've had to separate. And this helps to forge shared understanding and consensus among women and men about what the problems are. We want not just the problems of some members of that society to be addressed in this project. I'm looking for everybody to benefit equally. And so it's also going to forge shared understanding on the aims of the project, the strategies we're going to use, and what success will look like. So this is all going to contribute to a project where we're all on the same page and we're all going to work towards success for the project. The third tip I'll share with you is ensuring that women's views and genuine participation in all the steps, especially the design. We've already talked about that. And using parity targets in decision-making bodies. I've talked about that a couple times, and if you need more information on that, I'm happy to share. Sensitizing, training, and engaging men. We already talked about that there, and I gave you the URL, the hyperlink to see our own Guy Ryder, Director General's Gender Champion Commitments. You could also encourage gender champions in your own context. And then there are many tools that have been produced by JED, by ILO aims, by part of, by employment, UN Women, donors, including SIDA. And there's some hyperlinks in my PowerPoint that I thank Anita Motis for having helped me with in the PowerPoint. So, you know, you can Google these too. These are very easy to find. So I hope that this has been helpful. I've been talking a lot. I thank you for your suggestions and your comments. And I will close now and ask Fatima if we have any time for participants to make any last comments or you know, observations or questions. But I leave it to Fatima because I don't want to go over our time together.
Thank you, Adrienne. We still have 5 minutes. If we have any more comments or stories to share, experience to share, or any questions to you. So please, for anyone who wants to take the floor, please feel free to unmute yourself.
I have a question and I don't find the hand to raise. Can I ask?
Sure, please.
I wanted to ask, what would be good indicators if we're speaking about interventions that are cultural? If we're trying to change a culture where women are not decision makers, where women are not allowed to get to financial resources, register land or enterprises in their names, any productive activity that they're undergoing. What would be good indicators for us to formulate to capture the cultural change, which does not happen very fast and you cannot measure very quickly, and it could be small things that take a lot of time to actually see. So can you share with us what you think a good indicator formulation would be for cultural change?
Oh, okay, that's a very interesting question. Culture is the trickiest part, right? And I guess I would say that the good practices I've seen all over the world in ILO projects, and I've seen a lot of ILO projects in the field. I think that those projects that have used local opinion leaders, often men, have been the most successful in really moving things quickly, because as you said, if not, it takes a long time. So I remember one, I think it was an IPEC, so child labor project in Ghana, and I remember the ILO had worked with a local chief who, in the history of this community, was that the person who the chief appointed to take care of the community's money, its material assets, had always been a man. And in this particular area, a woman had actually gone to university, and she had been trained as a accountant. And she came back to Ghana, and the chief, ILO worked with this chief, and they encouraged him to appoint her as the group's accountant for responsible for the group, this ethnic group's money, and he did it. And you wouldn't believe what that unleashed as far as conversation and more, and other women being interested in other posts, and some of the other tribes wanted to visit and learn about how he did this, and it just unleashed it. So I guess I would say that it would be best to not try to come up with ideas yourself, but to actually, the more you get into conversations with those in the community, they are going to give you the ideas, and I think that that would be the place I would start. I'm always hesitant to try to measure changes in culture because it's such a sensitive issue. But if you can identify, every culture, every religion has both harmful, discriminatory elements in it, and it also has very progressive and rights-based elements in it. And so the extent to which you can latch on to some of those and use those. I remember women entrepreneurs in Morocco being shouted down by some men saying, you're not good Muslim women. What are you doing trying to, work with men and have companies and things? And these women shot right back and said, hey, one of the prophet's wife was actually an entrepreneur. He worked for her. So you need to use, the good practices that are embedded in that culture and in that religion, and somehow come up with a creative, way to measure this. I love indicators, and I'm sorry I started talking so long to answer your question. I have information if you send me your email, and I can send you some more information about indicators. My email is there on the front page of this presentation. Somebody else?
Adrian, I also have a question. It's Deborah from Better Work. We in the Better Work program, we are a lot working on gender issues, and we also develop gender-sensitive log frames. But referring to your point about indicators, I was wondering whether there's somewhere kind of a compilation of gender-sensitive indicators that the ILO, other ILO projects have developed, and or whether there is somebody in your team that can provide advice on how to come up with meaningful gender-sensitive indicators.
Yes, as a matter of fact, thanks for the question. A couple of years ago, I put together a table of the gender-inclusive indicators of decent work country programs from all over the world. And so I will share that. I will share that table. It's a little dated. It's a couple years old. So you get the point. And I will also share a compilation of gender-inclusive indicators that I found a couple of years ago on the internet. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Adrienne, I believe Ali wanted to ask a question.
Yes, actually. Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you, sir. I just would like. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. It's not a question actually. It's a good lesson, if I can say like that. It's enabling, a very good situation analysis from gender perspective. Is that to working through the national machineries for data collection and the entities for monitoring and reporting at the national level and subnational level. So this is, I think, a very good, good lesson that we got in Yemen, that we built the capacity for the statistical office and the National Women Committee, and this process was established 10 years ago, even before I get on board with ILO, so that the quality of the data produced by those national machineries being accredited and acknowledged by all parties, including donors, and being used for all situation analysis for the different project proposals, as well as the country context analysis. In the end of the support provided to those entities, they established like a special department to disaggregate gender indicators and data, and to like filtering all assessments and all surveys from those, this window, and ensure that the gender issues are included. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those good practices, and that's really inspiring. Somebody has sent in a little message while the others were speaking, and they were saying, "Hey, I feel there's still a lot to accomplish within our organization itself in terms of achieving gender balance." So yes, and that is one of the things that we track is the percentage of women and men in the professional categories, and also decision making, so the top posts within ILO. And so I'm going to share also with you the instructions of our own governing body to the DG about parity on ILC delegations. This is all about getting our own house in order. So we need to walk our talk, because the GB discussion with our Director General when the action plan came up, our own governing body members said the credibility of ILO is at stake if we're very respected for our work on pay gap, gender pay gap, maternity protection, protecting workers with family responsibilities, etc. But ILO must have its own house in order. So thank you for making that comment there.
Adrienne, I believe we're at the end of our time, so I suggest we close and
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody. This has been really interesting and interacting with you. And I will share some of the documents, including last one. It's a study on the best private sector examples of getting women into governing bodies, governing boards. And if there's one message I'll leave you with is the following. Try to make sure that you've got at least critical mass of women on your decision-making project mechanism, because once you've got critical mass working towards parity, those women are going to find the indicators with their male colleagues. They're going to come up with some creative ways to take the project forward. So empower the persons who are part of this project. So thank you again, and I wish you all luck. And please don't hesitate to contact me if I can help you further.
Thank you so much, Adrienne, and thank you everyone for attending and for your active participations today. You will receive a follow-up email within 48 hours, and since the webinar is recorded, you will receive the link also to the recording of the webinar. Also, we will we'll attach all the related documentation, and it will be available on the DC platform. On behalf of Bardev and on behalf of Adrienne, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to ask the participants of next week's workshop, as I sent you an email a couple of minutes ago, we will be changing rooms. So we're going to move in another WebEx room. So please use the link I just sent you, and we will see you in a couple of minutes to discuss and have a briefing on next week's workshop. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.